Well, I was a fanatic. There's no doubt, a fanatic. My goal was to get carried out of the wrestling room because of exhaustion, and it never happened. The thing it did for me every day about 6 o'clock is that when I got out, I looked back in and there was nobody else there. Bottom line was I didn't reach my goal. So guess what happened? I went back in the room again. But I got some quality time because of just some kind of a fanatic goal.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Folks, today's guest is Brendan Buckley. So Brendan is a former Division I wrestling coach at Cal Poly, but he now runs Beat the Streets New York, which is the flagship chapter of the amazing program Beat the Streets. And I really think you're going to like the conversation, just what Beat the Streets is, how much it does for the state of New York, and how much it does for the kids in the program. It's really an amazing thing. So sit back and enjoy the episode. Real quick, for past episodes, please visit WrestlingChangeMyLife.org. And if you're listening on your phone, please leave us a review, give us a rating, or subscribe on iTunes. And without further ado, let's take you to the podcast with Brendan Buckley. This was recorded at his office in New York City. Thank you. Brendan, pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate making some time for us.
Yeah.
We're here at Beat the Streets HQ in New York, which is awesome because I've heard a lot about it, mainly from the big gala that you guys do every year, whether it's the dual meet at Times Square or on the ship. It's very exciting. So let's just start with, what is Beat the Streets and what's your role here?
Beat the Streets is a youth development organization. The space that we reside in the nonprofit industry, we call sports-based youth development. Okay. So we are a wrestling organization. We strive to be more diverse and dynamic than just a place to come train. And the kids that we work with are really in need of the lessons that the sport of wrestling provides. And so in a nutshell, all coaches do this. All coaches that are passionate and really care about their kids, which coaching is. It's just such a great profession that it's shaping kids' lives. Yeah. And so it's really like we are trying to tackle and provide some clarity around the idea of just how does wrestling change your life? Like, what is it about the sport that is just such a strong part of your identity, and the people that go through the sport, what is it that makes them different? What is it that, why is there so many presidents, U.S. presidents that have wrestling in their background? Why is it, Wall Street is inundated with wrestlers? Why is it that so many leaders in society, teachers and educators, and it's not just, it's really not, it's not just the state titles. It's not just the All-American titles. It's not becoming an Olympian. It's just what is it about that journey that leads us to view the world through the lens of a wrestler, right? And so what we try and do at Beat the Streets in all of the different sites, and a lot of other people in the same space that we're in, we share an office here in Midtown Manhattan with an organization called Row New York, and another one called Play Rugby, and then another one called I Challenge Myself. And there's a whole host of others. And what we try and do is again, provide clarity around the lessons that our sport teaches and instills in young boys and girls, and teaches them like how to win in life, right? Yeah. And again, for a lot of the kids that we work with, they really need it. They need us. They need the sport of wrestling. They need to know how to fight through difficult circumstances. And so that's what Beat the Streets, that's our goal. The outcomes we're aspiring to provide to our kids are providing a lifelong impact, right? Teaching kids what it takes to do well in school, right? You could have a subpar record, a below 500 winning percentage, but you can take those skills that your coach taught you, and when you got your butt kicked on the mat and you came off in tears, and your coach mentored you to find some victories and to get you to believe in yourself. And we're very we really love the idea of the growth mindset, where it's not about the talents that you were born with, but about the work ethic that can lead to success no matter what, no matter how fast you are, or how strong you are, what your winning percentage is. You can get the lessons from the sport of the sport of wrestling that can lead you to become a high school grad and a college grad and a CEO and a titan on Wall Street,
right.
And a great role model and mother and father and coach. A lot of our best coaches now and most engaged coaches at Beat the Streets are our very same alumni that we mentored and tutored and coached just a few number of years ago, and now they're giving back. So
right.
It's kind of a long-winded answer, but we're trying to really take those lessons that wrestling provides through the wrestling experience, winning with grace, losing and realizing that it's not the end game.
Right.
There's still a whole longer journey out there for you. Setting goals and working hard to achieve them, and being a good teammate, and supporting one another, and knowing how to take constructive criticism, and knowing how not to point the finger and blame others when things don't go your way. And
right.
We're passionate that no other sport does that better than wrestling.
Amen. I feel like you took my pitch. I mean, you should be running the show here. But how do you guys do it though, right? So you have, before Beat the Streets, limited wrestling in the city, and it was very similar to what's happening in Chicago now. Chicago's a great wrestling hotbed, but the Chicago public school districts, very limited wrestling, and I didn't know that until recently. And I understand, was that probably the case before Beat the Streets, and what's been the impact before and after?
Yeah, the growth here in New York City has been massive.
Okay.
We're in our 13th year. In 2005, when Beat the Streets began, there were only 25 wrestling programs, and there was only one of those that was at the middle school level. So
where were the other ones at? High school or like elementary clubs?
Yeah, there were roughly 23, 24 high school programs, and
okay.
there was one middle school program.
What? That's
and
crazy.
Now there's 150 wrestling programs. And so that wouldn't be the case without Beat the Streets, and that wouldn't be the case without our strongest partner, New York City's Public Schools Athletic League. So the PSAL has been instrumental in partnership with Beat the Streets, and
mm-hmm.
Mike Novogratz was a huge part of that. Our founder, in addition to Mike, was Al Bevilacqua, who's a legendary wrestling coach from Long Island.
Okay.
Was a former Hofstra wrestling coach and worked at USA Wrestling. His sons, I believe, wrestled at Penn State and were All-Americans. Nice. And so their vision was to grow wrestling in urban centers, in metropolitan areas, something that's really rarely done. Wrestling is historically blue collar, Midwestern, rural sport.
Yep.
And so, through the 80s, 90s, Title IX was really decimating some wrestling programs. And not that long ago, Olympic wrestling was in jeopardy, and so there had been a current of wrestling is hurting right now. Wrestling is struggling right now. We need more people involved. We need more kids to be stepping up and joining wrestling teams. We need more coaches. We need more resources. We need opportunities. And so that's where Mike came in, and Al, they had the vision to grow it here in New York City, and they formed a partnership with the PSAL.
Yeah.
And it started out very humble beginnings. I think Mike just helped out at one wrestling program in Lower Manhattan and bought them a wrestling mat and probably bought them some uniforms. And then he did it for another program, and then he did it for another program and bought them a mat and some uniforms, and would go help out, just go in and roll around on the mats to help out. So they then took it to this idea to the PSAL and really wanted to scale it, and so they started a partnership where Beat the Streets would buy a mat and kick off the cost, the uniforms, and maybe any kind of tournament expenses. wrestling shoes,
Yep.
and they would do that for the first and the third year, and then they wanted a commitment from the school / PSAL to pay for the second year, and then the fourth year, and then every year
And
thereafter.
it's self-sustaining.
Yep. And
So how do they do that?
So this is long before I got here, but
Yeah.
that was the origin of it, and then
Okay.
they did that with one program, then another program, then another program, and as the PSAL realized the passion that Beat the Streets and our board had, and the resources that we wanted to put behind this plan, they really bought in, and now they fund 80 boys high school programs, and then we have the PSAL has a girls only wrestling league, which was like first of its kind.
Unheard of.
Girls versus girls,
Yeah.
not girls jumping onto a boys high school team, which we have that too, but we actually have an exclusively girls wrestling league. So at the high school level, the PSAL now supports 110 wrestling programs almost completely on their own. They have referees and they have competitions, and there's tournament travel, and all the high school wrestlers in New York City compete in Section 12, and that's like the New York State it's like how they qualify for the public school state championships, which takes place in Albany every February. And so again, before there was only 24 teams that were competing in that section. Now for the boys state championship, there's 80. So we're by far the largest section. We're by far the largest section that competes to go to the tournament. Now they have to qualify, right? There's not an 80-man bracket.
I was going to say, that sounds insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
They have to qualify to be able to compete in it, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of wrestlers here, and there's a lot of support, and the PSAL has been instrumental, and Beat the Streets has been instrumental, and so we still support the high school league. We have training centers. We have 3 now. We have one in Manhattan, one in Brooklyn, and one in Staten Island.
So these standalone buildings, or how does that work?
So we're in public high schools.
Nice.
We also have like in the summertime, we have college camps that we support kids to go to. We have travel competition pretty much year round. There's some preseason competitions where we host them here in the city. We'll go out of the city. In the postseason, we transition into freestyle, just like the rest of the country does, and we go to the Northeast Regionals, and we'll go to high school nationals, which that's actually folk style, but
Yep.
we will then send kids to the national championships in Fargo, North Dakota.
Which was an experience for those kids, right?
And so for a lot of these kids, they don't get out of the city, so to have an experience for them to get on a bus and be a part of a community, like even if a lot of their teams, they're not wrestling for Blair Academy, they're not wrestling for St. Ed's, they're not really we're trying to create that wrestling culture, that wrestling community that you see in the hotbeds, which ironically is not very far from us, Long Island and New Jersey and upstate New York and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So our kids are starting to get that same experience. We have quality coaches, both in our training centers, but our various high school coaches throughout the country, throughout the city. And so they get that experience, and they get to leave the city, and they get to be a team, and they get to have teammates, and they get to wear a consistent singlet and things like that. So
That's awesome.
And then we do off the mat mentorship too, which is relatively new. My predecessor Jim Fallis started. He called it the Top of the Podium Camp, which is the top camp. And they did that in the summer, where again they got the kids out of the city, just like when they go to various different college camps. And they did a nutrition workshop, and they did a anti-bullying workshop, and they wrote thank you letters to our donors. And
Love it.
And so that's sort of like the high school programming piece. Like those are the high school programs. Beat the Streets runs like supplementary programs to the high school program. So we have high school coaches where they may not have access to the wrestling room in the spring or in the summer or in the fall. They just get it from November to February. So we want to make sure our kids have every opportunity to improve and become really passionate and, strive to win a state title. So we have training centers year round. We want them to be able to compete preseason and postseason when their high school team is not going to.
Right. Just the same as everybody else.
Yeah, they don't have a wrestling club. That like that's where we come in. So we're providing that supplementary support. And then we started, like I was mentioning, this off the mat mentorship. We do an SAT prep program to help kids prepare for the SAT and graduate from high school and be able to attend and compete even in college in a high school wrestling team. We started a Regents test prep, which in New York State you have to pass each year to go to the next year in high school.
Okay.
We do life skill workshops. We have a relatively new, very strong partner, a technology company called Varonis Incorporated.
Okay.
And they are helping fund our SAT prep. They run an internship program for our kids where they experience a different branch of the organization, from sales and marketing to human resources to even industrial IT. They're doing life skill workshops surrounding financial literacy. So we're really trying to, we have a mantra called lifelong impact.
Yeah.
And so we're really, if we do our job, which it's hard, it's really hard to, it's not a suburban setting where, you see their parents all the time. You have a booster club. They're, making food for one another in the bleachers, and they're all hanging out. It's just, we do have some of that. We do have some parents like that, but we're trying to fill the void that some of our, some of the parts of our community may not have that. And so Beat the Streets wants to be that home.
Beautiful thing. I love it. And it's something where, who wouldn't be behind something like this? And just the organization of it is amazing. And one thing that really sticks out to me is, you and I could say wrestling changed our life. And I think most people who wrestled would agree that it did change your life. But for these kids, it's a whole other level of life changing. You're providing structure, and maybe just talk about some of the stories you've seen with some of these kids. And I hope eventually we can get some of those gentlemen on the program. But do you have any stories or any examples of how you're changing lives in the communities or some of the kids you're working with?
Yeah. So just today we found out that a member of our community, she was really involved in the Beat the Streets ecosystem here, wrestled at one of our strong high school programs. Her family recently lost their home. I think there was a fire, and instantly we brought it up at the staff meeting. We're going to notify our board of directors. We're going to put it on our social media. That's just a real easy in terms of something like, okay, let's put some resources together to support this person. Yeah. But some of our kids, we've had kids who, I've seen a couple of years ago, we had a kid, some kids who were incredibly obese. They weren't living healthy. They not getting perhaps healthy eating habits at home and not access to exercise. And so they have healthy, safe places to go train and to be mentored by kids. And they've been able to lose a lot of weight and, regain their confidence and develop healthy eating habits and just believe that they can, lead a healthy, strong, confident life. Just recently, one of our kids from Brooklyn, I wasn't even aware of this, was, throughout his high school career was living in homeless shelters, because they were living in upstate New York and was in a really difficult, challenging upbringing, and had to leave upstate New York to get out of that, what was a difficult environment. And the safest environment at that time was to live in a homeless shelter. And so now this kid had a great coach. He mentored him, Coach Perez out at Grand Street, and Odine Gray is the name of our student athlete, and he's now going to school at a college in upstate New York, getting an education. He's a member of the wrestling team at Cortland, and it's just outstanding stuff. And so this is I'll just share a story too.
Please. So
I was at a concert, and I've told my staff this a couple times, but sometimes, I wouldn't say sometimes, as wrestlers, we're always we just focus so much on what we're trying to fix or what we're trying to attain, or you don't really pay attention. You don't remember the 30 wins you might have in what would be a stellar season, but you remember the 2 that you lost, or maybe even just the 1 you lost in the state finals or NCAA finals or whatever it is. And so we're always trying to fix these things, and I can tell you that, anything we do in life is hard and challenging, but I didn't really quite understand how challenging and how hard the work is here in the nonprofit space. But I focus a lot how can we become the best sports-based youth development organization, and how can we impact our kids the most, better than anybody else? We want to be the best, and it's just really hard work, and we're trying to create a culture where in urban New York City there has never been a wrestling culture, so it's a lot of heavy lifting. It sometimes feels like you're pushing a boulder up a hill, but we're wrestlers and we keep doing it, and sometimes that can beat you down a little bit. And so I was at a concert recently, and I went and had a beer with after the show, and I ran into a guy, and I told him I asked him what he did, and he was a lawyer, and told him what I did, and he just looked at me and he was just like, man, you got it figured out. He's like, you're doing really good work. I'm like, I am. And I was like, but I've got my challenges. This job is really hard, and there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, things we're trying to do, and you feel overworked and understaffed, and you need more resources, and you want more success. And he just really stopped me and had to be like, no man, trust me, you are making a difference. He's like, I don't really feel I'm making a difference. He's like, I make good money. I went to a good school. I have a nice lifestyle, but he's like, I'm not really getting out of it what I would perceive that you're getting out of it in your career. And so it kind of right, it was help me stop the smell of roses.
Yeah.
And I took that opportunity and shared it with the staff, because it was in the month of August, and we were slammed in August. We were so busy. We had so much programming about to take off. We had camps and training centers, and Emma Randall had just joined her staff, and we were trying to make heavy programmatic. It was a tough month, and you could just feel it. God, man, we got to get through this month. And it was just a really timely occurrence to run into this guy and kind of bring me back down to earth and realize how important the work is that we do here at Beat the Streets.
Definitely, and that's a touching story, and it's so true though, because I work in software sales, and a lot of times I feel like, things are going well, but who cares? But then hopefully through this podcast, give back a little bit. But what you guys are doing is really moving the needle, and that's an amazing thing. And one person who's helped you guys a lot is this Mike Novogratz gentleman. You mentioned him a couple times. He's come up in a couple interviews I've had in the past. Maybe just introduce the listeners to who this person is and the impact he's had on wrestling, both at the Olympic level and helping save it, as well as what you guys are doing here.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, we Beat the Streets wouldn't be where we were without Mike. And I think American wrestling owes a huge debt of gratitude. He's one of the most supportive individuals, if not the most, in I don't know how long, if not ever.
Maybe worldwide wrestling, saving the Olympics.
Yeah, so he was involved in the preservation of wrestling, that group, to lobby and work with the international wrestling community to make sure that that Olympic wrestling was going to remain in the current schedule for the Olympics. And so, but we have a healthy staff. We have 7-8 full-time people here. We have a middle school league that we completely run every aspect, from identifying and hiring coaches to working with USA Wrestling on their insurance coverage, to paying for wrestling mats and sending them to different competitions in and out of the city, college wrestling camps, and our own top of the podium camp, and we're having a really powerful board of directors to buy into the vision, and to work with the public schools athletic league, and to just everything we do. We just couldn't, we just wouldn't be able to be at the destination where we are now, to work with so many kids. And our annual benefit, as you know, is a really just major marquee event. And so
can you describe it for the non
so
fans?
Our annual benefit is really atypical. It's not our cocktail hour. It's not a cocktail hour followed by a plated dinner and live auction. It's a fun. It's an event where we take we have a dual meet between the U.S. national team and we compete against another international team. We've wrestled Cuba, Russia, Iran, Japan, and then we've also had various other international competitors, like marquee matches. And last year in particular was probably one of probably the strongest lineup we had when we wrestled. We wrestled Cuba, and Frank Chamizo from Italy, who formerly was at Cuba, wrestled against Jordan Burroughs in just a star-studded match. It awesome capped off the evening. Kyle Snyder wrestled, and Kyle Dake, and David Taylor. There were just so many big-time matches, and so that event is our annual benefit. It's our we used to call it the gala. It's our primary source of funding for all the programs. So we gross $1.2 million on that event.
Wow.
And so all that goes to, the kids in New York City, pay for our staff, pay for the event, pay for sending kids to camps and tournaments and buses. And so it's really a marquee event. And so, like I said, it's not a traditional, fundraiser.
Black tie type.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's just cool. It's fun. It's exciting. It's a huge lift. It takes a lot of people and
How
a
do you
lot
block
of
off
partners.
the streets? For people who don't know, I remember the first year really caught my eye was in Times Square, right? Is this the one we're talking about? Yeah.
So
how do you block off the streets?
We had it on the Intrepid.
Okay.
We had it in Times Square. We had it in Grand Central, and for all I've been here 2.5 years, so I'm coming up. This will be the 4th annual benefit I've been involved with. I think the best one that I either visited as just a patron or worked was last year at Pier 17. So there's a lot of people that say no is Times Square. I loved Pier 17 at the South Street Seaport. Okay. You had Brooklyn Bridge in the background. You had the Brooklyn skyline in the background. You had Lower Manhattan in the background. Yeah. There was a lot of space there. We were able to come up with a really discounted general admission ticket for $25 for a lot of people that historically wouldn't have been able to pay the steeper ticket for the after party. So this year we're looking at a couple different options. We're looking at Madison Square Garden Theater, trying to take it indoors perhaps this year. So it's just, I think when you look at the wrestling, the not to be missed wrestling events across the globe, you have the Olympics or the World Championships in the non-Olympic years. You have the NCAAs. You have Beat the Streets annual benefit. It brings in teams from different parts of the world. We usually have 700 or so people with seats watching the event. Last year, as I said, we had another 500 with more space at Pier 17.
When's the live stream too? I watched it with a bunch of guys in Chicago. It's an event. It's not just to check the box, give some money to help a cause. It's awesome wrestling. Yeah, it's amazing.
And one of the things we really tried to do was keep the spirit alive of our kids. And in all the hoopla and all the just dazzle of the event and the underneath the bright lights in Times Square or seeing the Brooklyn and Manhattan skyline, the whole reason this exists, it's to support boys and girls that want to wrestle in New York City. It's to raise funds to help us continue to impact kids in middle school in our junior league, and then also in high school, and then trying to support them, again, not just training and trying to win a state title or finding a college to compete at, but really try to change their life and keep them engaged with the organization long after they leave.
I love it. It's awesome. And I do want to get some of your guys on here, notably the gentleman who won the state tournament. Name's escaping right now.
So we had Brandon Nunez and Terry Adams.
Who was the first one, though?
Brandon Nunez.
Yeah. And he won the New York States, right?
Yep, he was the first first beat the streets individual to win a Division I state title. Yeah, it was a big deal.
A big deal. Even if to win a state title in general is an amazing accomplishment. A lot of people train their whole lives to do it. And I know a lot of times we only focus on the NCAAs, but it's super hard to win a state title. And the fact that someone from the program did it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, very cool.
Yeah, it was
Were you guys all there for it, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Was it just like going like pandemonium?
Oh yeah, it was very emotional, and yeah, it was a big deal. We all knew that he should and he could, but it's
shot the whole time.
It's a major accomplishment. It's hard to do. All the pressure's on you. And then coincidentally, he wrestled Terry Adams in the finals that year and beat Terry. And then the next year, Terry made the finals again and won it.
Are you able to take any of the kids up there to the tournament to watch?
Yeah. We usually load up a busload of kids and bring them up to Albany for the last day for the finals.
I mean, that is like, they talk about ignition events and getting kids excited. Like, that must be amazing to see the state tournament for those kids, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, I know we have just a little bit of time left. I want to hit you with a couple quick questions here. The first is, you were a Division I coach for a long time, first at Columbia, then at Cal Poly, leading those organizations. How different of a day-to-day is it now versus what you were doing before? Harder, easier? What's that like?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. There's certain things that are easier. There's certain things that are harder. I think the thing that I find very challenging is it's like measuring the impact and measuring, like when you have a record, you know, okay, this was my record. I had 8 wins last year. I sent 5 guys to the NCAAs. You had 1 All-American. Well, you're going to have to outdo that. You're going to have to win 9 matches. And
right.
You're going to want to send 6 guys to the NCAAs and have 2 All-Americans or a national champ, and every coach can relate to that. And so it's really easy to measure how you're doing, and it's just a lot harder in the nonprofit space. I think you got to really, like, we had a staff retreat last week, and one of the items we talked about was celebrating success. And again, we got to keep reminding ourselves of the good work that we're doing. But we celebrate those stories, the kid who is in a homeless shelter who's now getting a college education. And then again, not all like gloom and doom, the kid who, he came in 9th grade and he was a very, mediocre wrestler, didn't believe in himself, maybe didn't have, a lot of the kids in Long Island and in the state of New York and everywhere else in the country start wrestling when they're 5 years old.
Right.
A lot of our kids don't have that.
Right.
That's why we started our middle school league, the junior league.
But
there's just so many stories of success and impact, and so we try and keep those alive. But there's also the mentality that, in nonprofits we're always trying to, you want to measure it. Like, how do you measure? Okay, how many kids did you have? Did you start at the start of the year? How many did you have at the end of the year? What was your attrition? How many kids are continuing in the sport from 8th grade to 9th grade? How many of your kids are placing at the state championships? And how many of your kids are going to college? And so sometimes it's hard to measure all that, or sometimes you don't like what you see. You want more. We're wrestlers. We just want more success, and we want to just be knocking it out of the park. But then you see a kid, and he comes by the office, and he's just happy to pick up a free pair of wrestling shoes.
Right.
Or he goes to a tournament, and I teach one of our training centers every Monday.
Okay.
And I would historically pop in and out, go maybe 1 week, and then go a couple weeks later.
You like the Godfather walking in there? The kids going nuts or what?
Well, I think I'm getting way more out of it than they are. So I have just been so rejuvenated to be
That's
just
awesome.
1 day a week to be able to be on the mat and working with kids and talking about the growth mindset and having them, encouraging them to write their goals down on their phone so they see it every day, and just trying to reinforce the idea that it's not about where you start, it's where you finish, and start to see kids coming back. I'm recognizing faces and starting to joke with me a little bit, and rolling around with them, and it's really so you have those experiences and you realize it just reminds you just how lucky we are, and just what it's just so tremendous for us to be a place for kids to just a safe space to come and train and learn the sport of wrestling, be around coaches that care for them, and ultimately trying to develop them into outstanding young men and women.
I love it. Last thing for you, I was gonna say coach, former coach, but kind of a coach now. How can folks outside of New York support the program? How can we find out about the gala? How can people support the cause?
The easiest thing to do is to go to our website, btsny.org. That stands for beatthestreetsnewyork.org.
Yep.
We're about to be publishing information on our annual benefit, which it's historically taken place in May. We may be moving it earlier to February, but all that will be, all that information will be spread out. We'll have a save the date form. I would definitely encourage people to follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're always broadcasting information out. If people want to get involved, and I'm on the website. My email is bbuckley@btsny.org, but anyone can sign up for our email distribution list, and we send out a newsletter and monthly updates. We do lots of cool events beyond the annual benefit. We have an actual adult wrestling competition called Step Into the Circle, and so that's a blast. We rent a cool warehouse in Brooklyn, and we have a bar in the corner, and we get it's just a really cool, fun event.
You get out there?
We do. I did.
Did you? You smoke them or what, man?
I got lost in the finals last year, but
really? Who do you wrestle?
I was happy to compete. I had wrestled Nick Arujah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some good guys who come out for that. Huh?
Yeah. It's a blast.
Wow.
Let's see. We also have a tailgate and tonics event in the fall. We did that in September. There's just always cool stuff going on. Anybody can, if they want to volunteer, we just have to have them fill out a form to be able to coach on the mat with the kids. You want to mentor a kid. Anyone that's interested in joining our board of directors, I'm more than happy to do so. There's lots of different ways to get involved, but the annual benefit's a blast.
What about if they're not from New York? Somebody just to donate money? Can they do that? How do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a donate tab on our website.
Because I think a lot of people just don't. People know the name. It's got some good brand traction, but it's like a lot of people where I grew up in the middle of a farm town where they're passionate about the cause, and I think they would help out if they could. Now they can't coach and they can't put the man hours in, but maybe the funds they could. So just go to the website, donate, and obviously that adds up, right? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, the more support we receive, the more we can do for our kids.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I'm excited. I'm feeling like warmth in the heart here. I don't know. It's just awesome to be in this office, and I understand what you guys do, so I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. That's the end of this episode, but definitely not the end of the show. For more episodes, please go to wrestlingchangemylife.org. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a star rating. Show the love, baby. Show the love. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Peace.